going to specifically talk about communities and how communities interact with each other and about the biosphere itself. So in previous videos, we've talked about populations, we've talked about species, so now we're moving up our little level of organization to talk about communities. So just a reminder, a community is a group of interacting populations in an area. So as we've been in previous videos looking at the pigs, we have grass, we have birds and insects. So these all species definitely interact with each other, and they are going to create biodiversity in the ecosystem itself. Now, another term to remember is biosphere, and biosphere is the entire portion of the Earth inhabited by life. So as we move forward, keep these two terms in mind. So throughout the year and all the videos and probably in other classes, you've heard about the term biodiversity. So biodiversity is the total of all the genetically based variation in all the organisms in the biosphere. So this picture represents a coral reef, and it's a snapshot of a very small snapshot of an environment, a marine ecosystem. Now think of all the different types of genetics going on in this particular picture. We have different species of corals in here, each of those corals having a little slightly different variation in their genes. Also, all the different types of fish in this particular picture here. We have different species of fish, and then each of those species represents a different variation through individuals. So biodiversity is very important as it provides a lot of benefit to humans, and it provides a healthy biosphere. So without biodiversity, it would be a very sad looking place. Everything would look pretty the same. Genetics would look the same. So biodiversity is really, really, really important. Now, do understand that there's 3 types of biodiversity, and all of it's represented in this picture as well. We have genetic biodiversity, and this is the variety of genes present in a population. So think of all the species of pigs that we have. Pigs, basically they're pigs, right? But each species has slightly different genes, and in each individual there might be something that's slightly varied from pig to pig. We also see biodiversity within species as well. So the number of species in a biological community represents biodiversity, and also the ecosystem. So we have a lot of biodiversity in the biosphere, in the variety of ecosystems that we have along it. So what we're going to take a look at is how communities interact with each other. And first we're going to talk about symbiotic relationships. Now, symbiosis or symbiotic relationships are any relationships in which 2 species live closely together. And we see this daily. If you have an animal at home, that's a symbiotic relationship. And we're going to talk a little bit about 3 types of symbiotic relationships. Just dealing with the insects and the birds and everything in your backyard, that also is a symbiotic relationship. So let's go and dive into these 3 types of symbiotic relationships. So the first one is parasitism. And if you do have dogs or cats or other animals at home, you understand that ticks are a very horrible parasite for your animals. So parasitism is where one organism lives on or in another organism and feeds on that organism. Now, in this case, one organism benefits while one is harmed. So going back to that tick example, the tick in this picture is definitely benefiting off of the dog, which is being harmed. So this is an example of a parasite or parasitisms. Other types of examples might be hookworms or tapeworms or anything that might live inside an organism as well. A second type of symbiotic relationship is called mutualism. And mutualism is a relationship between 2 species where each provide a benefit to the other. Now, we don't have acacia trees in our backyard here in Florida, but acacia trees and ants have a mutual relationship. So these ants are actually providing a defense mechanism for the acacia tree. And in return, the acacia tree is providing food and shelter for the ant. So it's very beneficial for both of these species here. A third type of symbiotic relationship is called commensalism. Now, this is a relationship in which one species benefits and the other one is neither helped nor harmed. Now, a good example of that is a whale shark and a remora. So in this case, the remora is actually getting a lot of benefit from the shark itself because it eats the shark. I shouldn't say eats the shark, but it eats all the algae that build up on the shark itself, and the shark is really providing a lot of protection for that remora. Now, in this case, the shark itself isn't really being helped, but it's not really being harmed. There's other research to say that it could be more of a helpful situation for the shark, but I'm not really well versed in this, but this is a classic case of commensalism here, the whale shark and the remora. Now, those are different types of symbiotic relationships: commensalism, mutualism, and parasitism. But there's other ways that communities interact with each other, and one of those is through competition. So, as we know, in the human species, we like to compete a lot of times in sports, in academics, and in other areas of our life. But in the animal world, there's a lot of competition for limited resources. Every animal, every organism needs food, shelter, and water. Those are the three main staples of any organism's life: food, water, shelter. So competition is basically where these organisms are competing for those resources. Now, both organisms could be harmed in these cases. So if a squirrel and a bird, let's say, compete for similar seeds, it's quite possible that if the bird gets it all, the squirrel is going to be harmed in this case. Sometimes maybe that seed is poisonous and they don't know it. Who knows? But there's a competition inherently involved in our organisms in life. Now, there's two possible outcomes to competition. The less competitive species will be driven to local extinction, and we do see that occasionally as well. The other outcome could be that one of the species will evolve through natural selection to use a different set of resources. And this is very prevalent on the Galapagos Islands with all the finches. I know we've talked about those finches a whole lot, but each of those finches actually has a very specific bird or a very specific beak for a specific resource. It lives in a very different area of a tree, either the ground or the very top of the tree. So it's quite possible that one species will evolve, or perhaps that less competitive species will be driven to extinction. Another way that, that communities interact with each other is through predation. Now, this is where one organism feeds on another, meaning one organism is definitely harmed while another benefits. This is a lot different from parasitism, though, because in that case, one acts as a host for another organism. In this case, it truly is about basically eating something else or feeding off of it. So in this case, you can think of anything, predator-prey type of situation. A snake and a bird, a snake and an insect, a hawk and a snake. There's a lot of different things that feed off of each other. Through time, however, predators and prey have created, or have developed, I should say, different adaptations in order to stop the predators from eating them, and for the predators, they've adapted to become a little bit more hunter-like, so they can actually hunt their prey. So let's take a look at some predator adaptations through time. Some of these might involve acute senses, so smell, sight, hearing. Those are some adaptations to be able to definitely hunt better. Claws and fangs, stingers, poison, those are definitely adaptations that will give the advantage to the predator. Also, being fast and agile and camouflaged. So you see some things like lions and tigers, they definitely mix in with their environments. So color is a huge camouflage. Some other adaptations on the prey side. So these types of organisms have developed camouflage. Like, take a look at this little toad up here. Can you actually find the toad in this picture? He's definitely camouflaged himself pretty well to hide. Mechanical and chemical defenses. So if you've ever eaten a piece of fruit that hasn't ripened yet, that is actually a chemical defense, because what's happening, it doesn't want to be eaten before those seeds ripen in order for the tree to be basically reproduced someplace else. So that's the reason why we have bitter fruit or bitter tasting seeds. And then, of course, sometimes we have mimicry. And in this case, over here, we have two different kinds of snakes. We have the coral snake and the corn snake. And one of these is poisonous. I believe poisonous is the correct term. One of them is not. Do you know which one? If you do, definitely let me know, and I will give you some extra credit points on your test. So if you can give me that rhyme, there's something about the colors. So give me the rhyme and let me know, and I'll give you extra credit points on your test.